Hello there, and welcome. Tonight, we are exploring one of the most enduring mysteries ever built by human hands. Not as a postcard image, not as a tourist attraction, but as a living question carved into stone. This is the story of the pyramids. Structures so vast that they seem to resist time itself. Shapes so simple that a child could draw them, and yet so complex that they continue to puzzle engineers, archaeologists, and dreamers alike. For thousands of years, they have stood beneath the desert sun, watching empires rise and fall around them. They have outlived kings, armies, languages, and belief systems. Wind has pressed against their sides. Sand has climbed their steps. Still, they remain. If you enjoy these gentle journeys into history and wonder, you are always welcome to like, subscribe, or share a quiet thought below. It helps other curious minds find their way here too. One sleepy soul at a time. But for now, there is nothing you need to solve, nothing to prove, nothing to carry. Let your shoulders soften. Let your breathing slow. Let your thoughts stretch out like the horizon at dusk. And together, we will wander through stone and silence. Let's begin. The pyramids begin with a question. Why build something so enormous? Before the smooth-sided giants of Giza ever touched the sky, there were simpler tombs. Flat-roofed structures called mastabas, rectangular, grounded, quiet. They marked the resting places of elites, officials, and early rulers of ancient Egypt. But then something changed. In the Third Dynasty, under the rule of King Djoser, an architect named Imhotep did something radical. Instead of building one mastaba, he stacked them, layer upon layer, stone rising in steps toward the heavens. The step pyramid at Saqqara was born. It was not yet the geometric perfection people imagine today. It was experimental, bold, unprecedented. It announced a new idea. Death was not an end. It was a passage upward. The pyramid shape may have echoed the bend in stone, a sacred symbol associated with creation and the first mound rising from primordial waters. In Egyptian cosmology, the world began as a hill emerging from chaos. To build upward was not only architectural, it was symbolic. The king was not merely buried, he was launched. Over generations, this stepped form evolved. Angles were tested. Stones were cut more precisely. Confidence grew. And eventually, under Pharaoh Khufu, the Great Pyramid of Giza took shape. When it was completed around 2560 BCE, it stood roughly 146 meters tall. For nearly 4,000 years, it remained the tallest human-made structure on Earth. Pause for a moment and imagine that. Nearly 4 millennia of storms, of migrations, of civilizations emerging across continents, and no building surpassed it. The Great Pyramid was built from an estimated 2.3 million stone blocks. Some weighed 2 or 3 tons. Others, especially those used in internal chambers, weighed far more. Each block had to be quarried, transported, shaped, and positioned with astonishing precision. The sides align almost perfectly with the cardinal directions: north, south, east, west. The margin of error is so small that modern surveyors still marvel at it. And yet, there were no steel cranes, no combustion engines, no satellite mapping, only human hands, rope, levers, sledges, and planning on a scale difficult to comprehend. For centuries, people asked how it was done. Some imagined lost civilizations. Others imagined extraterrestrial intervention. But archaeology has revealed something more grounded and in many ways more impressive. Workforce villages have been discovered near Giza, remains of bread ovens, fish bones, beer jars, evidence that thousands of laborers were fed, housed, and organized with remarkable logistical sophistication. These were not enslaved masses dragged in chains, as older myths suggested. They were skilled workers, stone cutters, haulers, engineers, craftsmen. Many likely worked in rotating crews during the Nile's flood season when farming paused. The river itself was part of the design. The Nile flooded annually, depositing fertile soil for crops. But it also became a highway. Stone from distant quarries could be floated closer to the construction site. The desert that feels so dry and silent today was once part of a living system of movement and supply. The pyramid was not just a tomb. It was a national project, a statement of unity, of divine kingship, of cosmic order. Inside the Great Pyramid are narrow corridors and chambers that still feel intimate despite the scale outside. The King's Chamber, the Queen's Chamber, grand gallery rising steeply like a stone throat. The interior is not decorated with elaborate wall carvings like later tombs in the Valley of the Kings. It is austere, geometric, focused. This simplicity makes the experience inside almost meditative. Stone pressing in from all sides, angles leading you upward, air heavy with history. Some shafts align roughly with specific stars as they would have appeared in the ancient sky. Orion's belt has often been mentioned. The circumpolar stars that never set. In Egyptian belief, these imperishable stars symbolized eternity. The king's soul or Ka might join them. Whether the alignments were exact by design or part of broader symbolic orientation remains debated. But the sky mattered. The pyramid was not only grounded in sand, it was pointed at eternity. Over time, more pyramids were built. Khafre, Menkaure, each slightly smaller than the last at Giza. Elsewhere across Egypt, dozens more rose. Some collapsed. Some remain as broken cores. The bent pyramid at Dashur reveals a change in angle midway up, as if the builders reconsidered stability during construction. You can see hesitation frozen in stone. Trial, error, adaptation. The pyramids are often described as perfect, but they are also human. They show experimentation, learning, refinement. They reveal a civilization thinking through architecture in real time. And yet, as we sit here in the quiet, Thousands of years later, what feels most remarkable is not only how they were built, it is why they still matter. They continue to pull attention across continents, across generations. Photographs cannot quite capture their scale. When people stand at their base, many describe a shift in perception. The blocks are not smooth triangles. They are massive stepstones larger than the human body. The pyramid overwhelms the eye. It recalibrates your sense of proportion. You feel small, but not insignificant. Small in a cosmic sense, as if standing beside a reminder that human beings have always reached beyond themselves. In the coming moments, we will wander deeper into hidden chambers discovered only recently, into the mathematics that shaped their angles, into the cultural meaning of mummification and the journey of the soul, into the way desert light changes the color of stone from pale gold to deep amber at sunset. For now, simply let the image settle. A triangle against a wide sky, wind brushing across ancient stone, time moving, but the structure remaining. The pyramids are not only monuments, they are questions in architectural form, questions about mortality, about ambition, about belief. And as your breathing grows slower and your thoughts drift gently, we will continue tracing those questions through history and silence. Long before sunrise touches the plateau, the desert holds a different kind of silence. The air is cooler. Shadows stretch farther than the structures that cast them. At that hour, the pyramids do not look golden. They look gray, muted, almost blue against the fading night. It is easy to forget that these monuments were once covered in smooth white limestone casing stones, highly polished, fitted so tightly that the seams were nearly invisible. When the sun struck their surfaces, they would have gleamed, not softly, brilliantly. Some ancient writers described them as radiant, almost blinding in certain light. The outer casing has long since been removed or weathered away, much of it repurposed for buildings in medieval Cairo. But if you look closely near the top of the pyramid of Khafre, you can still see remnants of that original skin, a faint echo of brightness. Imagine the effect thousands of years ago. 3 vast, smooth-sided mountains of light rising from sand, each face angled with mathematical intention, each line pointing toward the sky. The geometry was not accidental. The slope of the Great Pyramid is often described using the concept of the sect, an ancient Egyptian method of measuring angles using horizontal run and vertical rise. Rather than degrees, builders thought in proportions, in ratios. This allowed them to achieve a consistent incline across immense distances. The base spans more than 230 meters on each side, yet the difference between the longest and shortest sides is only a few centimeters. To accomplish this required more than strength. It required surveying skill. Ancient Egyptian surveyors may have used sighting rods and stellar observations to establish true north. Some researchers suggest that they aligned structures using the stars in the northern sky, perhaps tracking the rotation of circumpolar constellations to determine a stable axis. Even a slight miscalculation at the base would have multiplied upward into visible distortion. But distortion is minimal. This precision suggests repeated measurement, adjustment, verification, and patience. The building of a pyramid was not a rushed act of ego. It unfolded over decades. Work likely began early in a pharaoh's reign. The project continued season after season, rising gradually. The workers who laid the foundation may not have lived to see the capstone placed, yet they participated anyway. That kind of timescale changes how we think about purpose. Today, many projects are designed for speed, for visibility, for immediate return. The pyramids operated on a longer horizon. They were investments in eternity. The final stone placed at the top was called the pyramidion, often covered in electrum, a natural alloy of gold and silver. It would have caught the first light of dawn, a point of brilliance at the summit. The Egyptians believed the sun god Re traveled across the sky each day and descended into the underworld at night. The pyramid's shape may have symbolized a solidified ray of sunlight, a stairway, a frozen being. The structure was both tomb and transformation device. To understand this fully, we must step inside the belief system that gave it meaning. For the ancient Egyptians, death was not annihilation. It was transition. The soul was composed of multiple aspects. The Ka represented life force. The Ba embodied personality. The Ak signified the transformed, luminous spirit. Preservation of the body through mummification was essential because the Ka needed a physical anchor. Organs were removed carefully, wrapped, stored in canopic jars. The heart, believed to be the seat of intellect and morality, was often left in place. In the afterlife, it would be weighed against the feather of Mat, the principle of truth and cosmic balance. If the heart was heavy with wrongdoing, the soul faced obliteration. If it balanced, eternity awaited. The pyramid, then, was not merely a grave. It was a carefully engineered environment designed to protect the body and guide the soul's journey. Hidden corridors and sealed chambers served as safeguards against intrusion. Despite this, most pyramids were robbed in antiquity. Treasure attracted risk. Yet even without gold or jewels, the architecture itself remains the greater artifact. Modern technology has begun to reveal secrets still concealed within the stone. In recent years, scientists used muon tomography, a method that detects subatomic particles passing through structures, to scan the Great Pyramid. Unexpected voids were discovered, large internal spaces not previously mapped. Their purpose remains uncertain. They may be relieving chambers. They may be structural innovations. They may be symbolic corridors never meant for human passage. The mystery deepens rather than resolves. And perhaps that is part of the pyramid's power. They do not surrender all their answers at once. They invite investigation, then remain partially silent. Beyond Giza, pyramids also rose in other regions of Egypt. At Dashur, the red pyramid stands with a softer hue, built from reddish limestone. It represents one of the earliest successful attempts at achieving the smooth-sided form. Its interior passageways are steep and narrow. The air inside can feel warm and still. At Menem, another pyramid appears partially collapsed, its outer layers having fallen away over centuries. It resembles a tower more than a mountain. Some believe it may have been a structural failure. Others think casing stones were systematically removed later. In each case, the structure tells a slightly different story about engineering challenges and evolving techniques. Further south, in Nubia, pyramids were built by the Kushite kingdom. These were narrower and steeper, more compact. They remind us that the pyramid form did not belong to one moment or one ruler alone. It became an architectural language adopted and adapted across time and geography. When travelers from ancient Greece first saw the pyramids, they were already old. Herodotus wrote about them in the 5th century BCE, attempting to document their origins. His accounts mixed observation with legend. He described vast numbers of laborers, ramps extending outward. Some of his details conflict with modern findings. Others align surprisingly well. What matters is that even in antiquity, the pyramids were considered ancient. They were relics within relics. Standing there, a Greek visitor would have felt the same astonishment that tourists feel today. The same recalibration of scale. There is something about their triangular silhouette that feels archetypal, stable, grounded, inevitable. A pyramid distributes weight downward. Each layer supports the one above it. From a structural standpoint, it is one of the most stable shapes imaginable. Perhaps that stability contributed to its symbolic resonance. A base firmly planted, a peak reaching upward, balance between earth and sky. As wind continues to move across the plateau, it carries fine grains of sand that polish stone slowly. Over centuries, this erosion softens edges. Yet the core remains. Time works patiently, but so does gravity. And gravity is on the pyramid side. The blocks press inward, reinforcing stability. What we often call mystery may partly be unfamiliarity with ancient logistics. Quarries have been found where massive stones were cut directly from bedrock. Chisel marks remain visible. Sled tracks carved into limestone floors reveal how blocks were dragged. Scenes painted in tombs depict workers pouring water onto sand to reduce friction while hauling statues. Experimental archaeology has shown that wet sand significantly decreases resistance. This single detail transforms the question from impossibility to ingenuity. The workers were not defying physics. They were understanding it. They were not performing miracles. They were applying observation. There is something deeply calming about that realization. Greatness can emerge from repetition, from coordination, from steady effort applied over long spans of time. Imagine the rhythm of construction, morning light over scaffolding, teams hauling in sync, commands called out across the site, dust rising, stone settling into place. Not chaos, not frenzy, but organized momentum. In the heat of midday, work would slow. Shade sought where possible. At night, perhaps fires flickered near workers' villages, bread baked, stories exchanged, the pyramid growing incrementally above them. For many, it may have represented more than duty, participation in something enduring, a contribution to a structure meant to outlast them all. And as your breathing continues to slow, you can almost hear that distant rhythm. Stone against stone, wind over sand, time layered carefully, like blocks placed with intention. Walk slowly now, not with your feet, but with your attention. Circle the base in your mind. Notice how the desert floor seems almost level, as if prepared long before the first stone was set down. It was. Engineers carefully leveled the bedrock. In some areas, they cut directly into the natural limestone plateau, carving channels and smoothing surfaces to create a stable foundation. A pyramid's stability begins below ground. If the base shifts, the entire structure suffers. So before the first visible layer rose, there was groundwork. That detail rarely appears in photographs. Yet it may be one of the most important parts of the story. Invisible preparation. From a distance, the pyramid appears solid and seamless. Up close, it reveals its layered nature. Courses of stone stacked with deliberate variation. Lower blocks often larger, upper courses slightly smaller. This gradual reduction lightened the load on the lower tiers. It also made transport more manageable as the structure rose higher. One of the enduring questions has been about ramps. How were the stones lifted? Some theories propose a long, straight ramp extending from one side, gradually rising with the structure. Others suggest a spiral ramp wrapping around the exterior. Still others imagine internal ramps hidden within the pyramid's mass. No definitive ramp remains have been found that match the full scale required, but fragments of ramp systems have been discovered at other sites. It is possible that multiple techniques were used in combination. Straight ramps for lower levels, more complex systems as height increased. The truth may not be singular. It may be layered, like the structure itself. There is a tendency to assume ancient builders worked without error. But archaeological evidence suggests constant adjustment. Stone blocks were sometimes ray-cut, angles slightly corrected mid-construction. The bent pyramid, with its visible change in slope, stands as physical evidence of learning in progress. Originally begun at a steep angle, it shifts midway to a gentler incline. Perhaps cracks appeared. Perhaps structural stress became visible. Instead of abandoning the project, the builders adapted. Adaptation left a visible scar, and that scar is part of its beauty. Inside the Great Pyramid, the air grows cooler as you imagine descending narrow passageways. The descending corridor slopes downward toward an unfinished subterranean chamber, rough, carved directly into bedrock. Its purpose remains uncertain. Was it abandoned early in planning? Was it symbolic? The ambiguity lingers. Then there is the ascending passage, tight, angled sharply upward, leading into the Grand Gallery. The Grand Gallery rises nearly 9 meters high, its corbelled walls stepping inward as they ascend. The space feels unexpectedly spacious compared to the tight corridors below. It is almost cathedral-like in proportion. Light, if present, would catch the edges of stone in geometric lines. At the top lies the king's chamber, constructed from massive granite blocks transported from Aswan, hundreds of kilometers away. Granite is harder than limestone, more difficult to quarry and shape. Its presence inside suggests deliberate selection. Above the king's chamber are relieving chambers, designed to redistribute weight. Without them, the ceiling might have collapsed under the immense pressure above. These hidden spaces were discovered centuries after the pyramid's construction. They reveal an understanding of load management far ahead of what many assume ancient cultures possessed. The sarcophagus inside the king's chamber is carved from a single block of granite. It is slightly too large to have been carried through the existing passages, suggesting it was placed during early construction phases before the corridors were fully sealed. Every detail hints at planning beyond immediate sight. The pyramid was not assembled randomly. It unfolded according to a blueprint. Yet no blueprint survives. No written manual has been found detailing step-by-step instructions. What remains are stones, alignments, and patterns. And from those, we reconstruct intention. Sound behaves strangely within enclosed stone chambers. Low tones resonate. Footsteps echo with subtle distortion. Some researchers have studied acoustic properties inside the Great Pyramid, noting how certain frequencies amplify within the king's chamber. Whether intentional or incidental, the effect adds another layer of experience. The structure is not silent. It hums faintly with the physics of enclosed space. Imagine standing alone inside. No electric light, only torchlight flickering against granite. Breath steady, air heavy, the awareness of mass above you. Millions of stones pressing downward, and yet nothing moves. The structure holds. Outside, the Sphinx lies nearby, its lion's body stretched forward, human face gazing toward the rising sun. Though not a pyramid, it shares the plateau and the mystery. Carved from a single limestone outcrop, the Sphinx has weathered differently than the pyramids. Erosion patterns along its body have sparked debates about rainfall and age. Some researchers argue it may be older than traditionally believed. Others attribute the weathering to wind and sand. The debate continues. Time leaves signatures. Interpretation reads them. Beyond the Giza Plateau, the landscape holds more than stone. There were temples associated with the pyramids, causeways connecting valley temples to mortuary complexes, ceremonial routes along which the body of the king would travel during funerary rites. The pyramid was part of a larger ritual landscape. It did not stand alone. Boats were buried in pits nearby. One such solar boat, discovered disassembled in a sealed pit near the Great Pyramid, was reconstructed in modern times. Made of cedar wood, it measures over 40 meters in length. It was likely intended to carry the pharaoh alongside the sun god in the afterlife. Even in death, movement mattered. The journey continued. The Nile flowed to the west of the plateau. In Egyptian symbolism, west was associated with death, because that is where the sun sets. East represented rebirth. The pyramids were positioned deliberately on the west bank. Geometry met cosmology. Orientation met myth. Night falls differently in the desert. Without urban light, the stars appear sharper. Orion rises. Sirius gleams. The same constellations the ancient sky watchers observed still arc overhead. Imagine a priest standing beside the newly finished pyramid, looking upward, seeing alignment not only in stone, but in sky. There is a temptation to romanticize, to imagine secrets lost forever. Yet much of what makes the pyramids extraordinary is not hidden knowledge. It is visible discipline, repeated measurement, collective labor, time invested beyond a single lifespan. We often search for mystery in the unknown, but sometimes the deeper wonder lies in the known made vast. Millions of stones, decades of coordination, a civilization committed to translating belief into architecture. As centuries passed, pyramid construction eventually ceased. The reasons remain debated: economic shifts, security concerns, changing burial practices. Later, pharaohs chose hidden tombs carved into cliffs rather than towering monuments. Visibility became vulnerability. The Valley of the Kings offered concealment, where pyramids offered declaration. And yet, even as the era of pyramid building ended, their presence shaped everything that followed. Foreign rulers imitated aspects of their form. Later cultures marveled at them. They entered myth. They entered imagination. In medieval times, travelers chipped away at casing stones. Explorers entered dark corridors seeking treasure. In modern centuries, surveyors measured angles with lasers. Scientists scanned interiors with particle detectors. Tourists now approach with cameras instead of torches. But the essential experience remains strangely similar. A human body standing beside immense stone. A mind trying to grasp scale. A quiet question forming. How did they do this? And perhaps even more softly, why did they feel compelled to try? The wind continues. The sand shifts. Yet the silhouette endures. We will keep walking, further into the cultural imagination that surrounds these monuments, further into the mathematics of their design, further into the way they have influenced architecture across continents and centuries. Let your breathing stay slow. Let your thoughts drift like fine dust in golden light. If you widen your view beyond Giza, the story stretches even farther back. Before smooth faces reflected sunlight, before granite chambers echoed with quiet resonance, there were experiments in stone that changed architecture forever. The transition from mud brick to limestone was not just a material shift. It was a philosophical one. Mud brick erodes. Stone endures. To build in stone was to declare permanence. Imhotep, the architect often associated with the step pyramid, was later deified. Not because he built tall, but because he thought differently. He imagined that a royal tomb could be more than shelter for the body. It could be a cosmic marker. The step pyramid complex at Saqqara includes courtyards, dummy chapels, and symbolic gates. Many of these spaces were not meant for everyday use. They were theatrical, ceremonial, architecture as ritual landscape. The pharaoh, in death, continued to perform symbolic acts of kingship through these constructed environments. Movement through space mirrored movement through myth. This layering of symbolism persisted as pyramid design evolved. Each block was physical, but each alignment carried meaning. Some researchers have explored mathematical relationships within the Great Pyramid's proportions. The ratio between the pyramid's perimeter and its height has been compared to circles and constants. Debate continues about whether such relationships were intentional or coincidental. Ancient Egyptians certainly understood geometry at a practical level. They measured land after annual Nile floods. They calculated volume and area for taxation and agriculture. Their mathematics was pragmatic, rooted in function. Whether they embedded advanced symbolic constants deliberately remains uncertain. Yet even without modern mathematical language, their achievement remains extraordinary. Precision at that scale requires not just knowledge, but consistency. The desert environment itself played a role in preservation. Low humidity and minimal rainfall protect limestone surfaces from rapid decay. In other climates, similar structures might not have survived intact. Geography became ally. Still, weathering does occur. Tiny fissures widen. Surface layers flake. Archaeologists and conservationists now work continuously to stabilize what time slowly alters. Ironically, modern pollution sometimes accelerates erosion more than ancient wind ever did. The pyramids have endured thousands of years, yet they are not immune. They require care. This raises another quiet truth. Endurance does not mean invulnerability. Even monuments of stone rely on attention. In the 19th century, scientific archaeology began to replace treasure hunting. Systematic documentation emerged. Measurements recorded. Artifacts cataloged. The pyramids shifted from legend to data point. Yet fascination did not fade. Instead, it deepened. Because measurement revealed not simplicity, but intricacy. Nearby cemeteries contain the tombs of workers and officials. These graves include inscriptions naming individuals who labored on royal projects. Crew names have been discovered etched into internal blocks. One team referred to themselves as the Friends of Khufu, another as the Drunkards of Menkaure. These names feel surprisingly human, playful, proud. They remind us that the pyramid was not built by abstraction. It was built by people with humor and identity. People who sweated under the same sun that warms the plateau today. Imagine the coordination required. Quarries operating miles away. Stone cutters shaping blocks with copper chisels and pounding stones. Transport teams hauling loads along prepared tracks. Supervisors tracking progress. Food supplies arriving daily. Grain ground into flour. beer brewed for hydration and calories, medical care administered when injuries occurred. Evidence of healed fractures found in worker remains suggests treatment and recovery, not abandonment. The workforce was valuable. This was organized labor at scale, and scale alters perception. Stand far enough away, and the pyramid appears static. Stand close enough, and you see incremental assembly. History often feels like that. From afar, it appears inevitable. From within, it is made of small decisions repeated thousands of times. The pyramid did not appear overnight. It rose block by block, each placement perhaps accompanied by shouted commands, measured pauses, adjustments. The rhythm of repetition. In some ways, the pyramid resembles a physical record of persistence. Stone layered upward with patience. There is something deeply meditative about that image. Layer, settle. Layer, settle. Over decades, intention accumulates into monument. Beyond engineering, the pyramids influenced imagination across continents. Ancient Greeks speculated about their purpose. Roman emperors visited in awe. Centuries later, Napoleon stood before them and addressed his soldiers, reminding them that millennia of history watched from those stones. Artists sketched them. Writers referenced them. In the 19th and 20th centuries, fascination blended with mysticism. Speculations emerged about hidden codes, secret chambers, prophecies embedded in angles. While many such theories lack evidence, they reveal something important. The pyramids invite projection. Their simplicity allows meaning to be poured into them. A triangle, a horizon, clean geometry against open sky. Human beings are drawn to symmetry, to balance. The pyramid offers both. 4 sides converging into one apex. Multiplicity resolving into unity. Even today, architects borrow the form. Glass pyramids, monuments, corporate logos. The silhouette remains recognizable across cultures. It has become archetype. Yet unlike many archetypes, this one is anchored in stone. Return now gently to the plateau itself. Imagine standing at a slight distance as sunset approaches. The light shifts from white to amber. Shadows grow longer. Edges soften. The stones absorb warmth during the day and release it slowly into cooling air. Temperature drops gradually. A hush spreads as tourists depart. Desert wind moves lightly across sand. In that moment, the pyramids feel less like puzzles and more like presences. They are not asking to be solved. They are simply there, existing at a scale that stretches the mind. If you sit quietly long enough, the mind begins to quiet as well, because there is nothing hurried about stone, nothing reactive, only mass and patience. Civilizations have risen since their construction. Empires have collapsed. Languages have evolved. Technologies have transformed daily life beyond recognition. Yet the pyramids remain almost indifferent to those changes. They remind us that human ambition can take many forms. Some chase speed. Some chase expansion. Ancient Egypt chased continuity. Continuity between life and death, between earth and sky, between king and cosmos. The pyramid was the axis around which that continuity revolved. And as your thoughts drift slowly, you may notice something subtle. The more you imagine the pyramid, the more still your mind becomes. Its shape is uncomplicated, stable, a broad base supporting a narrowing ascent. Perhaps that simplicity is part of its enduring power. Not complexity, but clarity. A reminder that monumental things can arise from consistent effort, from measured planning, from belief carried across generations. If we shift forward in time, something remarkable happens. For thousands of years after their completion, the pyramids stood without scaffolding, without maintenance crews, without modern reinforcement. They simply existed. Wind moved across their surfaces. Stars traced slow arcs above them. Sand accumulated and dispersed in cycles too gradual to notice in a single lifetime. When early modern engineers began to study them closely, they expected irregularity. They found intention. The base of the Great Pyramid is not perfectly flat. It is very slightly concave on each side. This subtle inward indentation may have helped stabilize the outer casing stones and resist slippage. From ground level, the effect is nearly invisible. From above, it becomes detectable. A small correction embedded within vast scale. Such refinements suggest the builders were not improvising blindly. They were iterating, testing, adjusting, refining. One of the most overlooked elements is the sheer volume of organization required. Imagine keeping track of millions of stones, each one cut, moved, placed in sequence, without spreadsheets, without digital models. Yet the alignment holds. The pyramid's corners form almost perfect right angles. The base is astonishingly level relative to its footprint. Surveying techniques likely involved careful use of plumb lines, leveling trenches filled with water, and celestial observation. Water finds its own level. The sky offers a stable axis. Simple tools used precisely can achieve extraordinary results. That realization softens the mystery without diminishing the wonder. Beyond the engineering lies the social dimension. Construction of the pyramid required centralized authority. Resources had to be allocated, food transported, labor coordinated. Such projects reflect not only technical skill, but political stability. A fractured society does not build monuments that take decades to complete. The pyramids, therefore, signal a period of organizational cohesion. Yet cohesion does not mean uniformity. The workers were divided into crews and subcrews, each with its own identity and internal hierarchy. Graffiti found within hidden chambers suggests pride in team accomplishment. Names were written not for public admiration, but perhaps for internal recognition. The stone itself became a quiet ledger of human participation. Over time, however, the reasons for pyramid construction evolved. Later pyramids were smaller, less grand. Economic shifts likely played a role. so did changing religious emphasis. Royal burial practices moved underground, hidden within cliffside tombs. Secrecy replaced spectacle. The desert adapted to new expressions of belief. Yet the older pyramids remained visible reminders of a previous era's ambition. As centuries passed, sand partially buried lower sections. Villages rose nearby. Trade routes shifted. The structures entered new contexts. They became landmarks for travelers, reference points for caravans crossing vast open land. Even when belief systems changed, the pyramids remained. Christian monks once lived in their shadows. Islamic scholars studied them. Each generation interpreted them through its own lens. Some saw them as remnants of a flood before recorded history. Others imagined hidden knowledge encoded in stone. The pyramids became mirrors. Whatever a culture valued, it projected onto them. Immortality, mystery, mathematical perfection. Yet the stone remained silent. In the 19th century, photography introduced a new way of encountering them. Images circulated across Europe and America. Suddenly, people who would never travel to Egypt could see their silhouette. Two-dimensional reproductions carried three-dimensional awe. Still, something is lost in translation. Scale is difficult to convey through a lens. When standing at the base, the stones are not distant shapes. They are textured, weathered, some edges chipped, some surfaces smoothed by centuries of wind. You can place your hand against limestone that was set in place before recorded Western history began. That tactile moment compresses time. The mind tries to grasp thousands of years. The skin simply feels cool stone. Modern scanning technologies continue to explore interior spaces. Ground-penetrating radar, thermal imaging, wand detectors mapping density variations. Each method adds a layer of understanding without dismantling the structure. It is a quiet partnership between ancient engineering and modern physics. The pyramid does not reveal everything at once, but it does allow questions to deepen. One of the more poetic aspects of the Great Pyramid is its relationship to light. During equinoxes, sunlight strikes its faces with symmetry. The interplay of shadow and illumination accentuates its geometry. In earlier eras, the polished casing would have amplified this effect dramatically. Imagine dawn light sliding down a gleaming slope, illuminating the desert in reflected brilliance. The pyramid was not only a tomb, it was a light instrument. It interacted with the sun daily, and as night falls, its edges soften under starlight. Without artificial illumination, the pyramid becomes a dark triangle against a silver sky. Its silhouette merges with shadow. It feels less architectural and more elemental, like a natural formation shaped by geology rather than human effort. That duality is striking. It is unmistakably artificial, yet it feels ancient in the way mountains feel ancient. Perhaps because both mountains and pyramids are expressions of accumulation, layer upon layer, pressure over time, one shaped by tectonics, the other by intention, and yet both endure. The pyramids also invite reflection on human scale. Each block was lifted by hands, placed by bodies. No single individual saw the entire structure completed from foundation to capstone. It required generational continuity. This kind of continuity is rare in modern life. We are accustomed to rapid construction, short project cycles. The pyramids teach something quieter. That time itself can be an ingredient. That vision can outlast its originator. As your breathing remains steady, imagine a single stone block, quarried from bedrock, separated from its original formation, dragged across sand, lifted carefully, set into position. Once placed, it never moves again. It becomes part of something larger. It no longer exists independently. It supports and is supported. There is a calm dignity in that image. Each block is both individual and collective. Together, they form a structure that resists time. Centuries have passed. Empires have written and erased their own histories. Yet these pyramids remain as fixed reference points. They do not argue. They do not explain. They simply stand. And in standing, they invite us to consider endurance not as spectacle, but as quiet persistence. As centuries unfolded, the pyramids began influencing architecture far beyond the Nile Valley. Long after the age of pharaohs had faded, travelers carried stories of these immense structures across the Mediterranean. The shape lingered in memory. In Mesoamerica, civilizations such as the Maya and the Aztecs built stepped pyramids of their own. These were not direct copies. They arose independently, shaped by different beliefs and materials. Yet the instinct to build upward in layered stone appeared again. Broad bases, rising tiers, sacred summits. Across continents, the pyramid form resurfaced as a symbol of connection between earth and sky. It suggests something fundamental in human imagination, a square foundation rooted in stability, a narrowing ascent toward transcendence. In more recent centuries, architects incorporated pyramidal forms into memorials, museums, and glass atriums. The silhouette carries authority, balance. It feels complete. There are no dangling edges, no unresolved corners, just convergence. Modern engineering often studies ancient techniques not out of nostalgia, but practicality. The way the pyramids distribute weight has informed structural design principles. The compression of stone blocks under gravity creates stability through mass alone. No mortar was required between many of the core blocks. Their own weight holds them in place. Friction becomes ally. This is physics in its simplest form, mass settling into equilibrium. When earthquakes strike regions far from Egypt, structures designed with pyramidal geometry often demonstrate resilience. The shape resists tipping. It disperses force downward. In this sense, the pyramid is less a relic and more a lesson, a reminder that simplicity can produce strength. And yet, for all the technical admiration, the emotional impact remains central. People who visit often describe an unexpected stillness. The desert horizon stretches outward in quiet vastness. The sky appears larger than usual. Against that openness, the pyramid's presence feels steady, not aggressive, not urgent, just firm. There is no decoration screaming for attention, no intricate carvings demanding interpretation. Its power lies in proportion. Even the absence of ornament becomes part of its identity. Remove distraction. Leave form. Over time, sand has risen and fallen around their bases. At certain periods in history, the lower courses were partially buried. Excavations revealed passages once hidden beneath accumulated dunes. The desert does not simply erode. It conceals, then reveals again. Cycles of exposure and covering mirror cycles of cultural memory. Interest intensifies. Interest fades. Interest returns. Throughout these cycles, the pyramids remain patient. They do not demand attention. They receive it. At night, when the plateau empties, the structures become silhouettes again. Moonlight washes over limestone, softening edges into silver-gray gradients. Wind moves in low tones across open space. Without human voices, the environment reclaims quiet authority. Imagine lying on warm sand, looking upward. The pyramid's outline cutting into the stars. Orion rising. The Milky Way faintly visible in darker eras before city glow. Ancient builders saw that same sky. Their understanding of astronomy may not match modern astrophysics, but their observation was meticulous. They tracked seasonal cycles. They marked heliacal risings of stars to anticipate Nile floods. Their survival depended on celestial awareness. The pyramid's orientation toward cardinal points reflects that relationship. It anchors Earth to sky, a fixed geometry beneath moving constellations. The passage of time around such permanence can feel surreal. Stand there long enough, and centuries compress. The Roman Empire becomes recent. Medieval kingdoms feel temporary. Even modern nations seem fleeting compared to stone, placed 4,500 years ago. This shift in perspective alters internal tempo. Urgency fades. Concerns shrink against long horizons. It becomes easier to breathe slowly, because the pyramid is not hurried. It has already outlasted everything that rushed past it. There is another layer to consider. The workers who built these monuments did not know how future generations would interpret them. They could not predict tourism, photography, satellite imaging. They worked within their present, guided by belief and leadership. And yet their effort became timeless. That is the quiet paradox. Action rooted in one era can echo beyond it. Stone set with intention becomes message without language. The pyramids do not speak in words. They speak in endurance. They demonstrate what coordination can accomplish, what patience can produce. In the modern world, we often measure success by speed and innovation. The pyramids measure it by longevity. How long can something remain standing? How long can an idea persist? The idea here was immortality, not merely for an individual ruler, but for order itself. Matt, The principle of balance and harmony was central to Egyptian thought. The pyramid, stable and symmetrical, reflects that principle physically. A balanced base, even slopes, centered apex, cosmic order rendered in stone. As you imagine tracing your hand along one of its blocks, notice the texture. Tiny fossil fragments embedded in limestone from ancient seas. Yes, seas. Long before pharaohs, the land beneath Giza was underwater. The limestone formed from compressed marine sediment. Shells and microorganisms hardened over millions of years. Those fossils now sit within pyramid stones. Time layered upon time. Ocean floor becomes desert plateau. Desert plateau becomes monument. Geological time meets human time. That intersection humbles the mind. The pyramids are not the oldest things on Earth. They are ancient, but they rest on rock far older still. They are a chapter in a story far longer than civilization. And yet, within that vast scale, human effort still matters. A single block lifted, a single line aligned. Choice and geology intersect. As the wind continues across the plateau, it shapes nothing dramatic. It simply moves grains slowly from one place to another. Persistence in motion. Stone persists in stillness. Between motion and stillness, the pyramids remain. There is a psychological shift that happens when you stand before something that has survived for millennia. It is subtle, not dramatic. You may not notice it at first, but your internal clock begins to slow. Modern life trains attention toward urgency. Notifications, deadlines, acceleration. The pyramid does not participate in that rhythm. It has already endured drought, invasion, neglect, and rediscovery. It does not react. This creates an unusual contrast. You with a heartbeat measured in seconds. It with existence measured in eras. When confronted with that contrast, something inside quiets. Perspective stretches. The mind begins to loosen its grip on immediate concerns, because the structure in front of you does not acknowledge them. It does not hurry. It does not update. It simply stands. In that stillness, many visitors describe a feeling that is difficult to name. Not fear, not excitement, something closer to awe. Awe is a fascinating state. Psychologists describe it as the feeling that arises when we encounter something vast that challenges our mental framework. It can reduce self-focus. It can expand perception. The pyramids reliably evoke that response. Their scale exceeds expectation. Even when you know their measurements, standing at their base alters perception. Your body becomes reference point. Each stone block near the ground can weigh more than a small car. Yet it fits into a greater pattern with others, seamlessly. The mind tries to reconcile weight and placement. How did it rise? And as that question floats, the body remains small beside it. This smallness is not diminishing. It is grounding. You are reminded that human capability, when organized collectively, can produce permanence. The pyramid becomes less about mystery and more about cooperation across time. Another layer of quiet wonder emerges when you consider that the builders never saw their work as ancient. To them, it was immediate, necessary, current. The concept of ancient Egypt did not exist for them. They lived in the present, unaware that future civilizations would label their world as distant history. This reminds us that we too live in what will one day be called ancient. Our structures, our roads, our monuments. Some may endure, others may vanish entirely. Time decides gently. The pyramids survived partly because of their material, partly because of their environment, and partly because of their geometry. Their triangular shape resists collapse. Their massive blocks resist displacement. Their desert location limits vegetation growth and heavy rainfall. Multiple conditions aligned to favor endurance. It is a quiet collaboration between design and environment. Even so, edges have softened. Height has diminished slightly over millennia. The Great Pyramid once stood taller than it does today. The loss of casing stones reduced its sharp apex. Yet the core remains unmistakable. Imagine the first time someone saw it from a distance in antiquity. A caravan approaching from the Nile floodplain, heat shimmering in the air. Then, on the horizon, a precise triangular silhouette breaking the flat line of sand. The shape would appear unnatural, too symmetrical to be a hill, too vast to be a dwelling. As you approached, scale would slowly reveal itself. What first seemed modest would grow larger with each step. Perspective would shift repeatedly. The pyramid teaches patience even in approach. It does not reveal itself all at once. From far away, it is outline. Closer, it is stone. Closer still, it is texture and shadow. There is something meditative in that progression. Layered understanding through gradual proximity. Modern visitors often photograph the pyramids, capturing their profile against the sky. But photographs flatten depth. They remove weight. Standing before the structure restores gravity to the experience. You feel its mass not through numbers, but through presence. The desert around it amplifies that presence. There are few competing forms on the plateau. Open space allows the pyramid to dominate the visual field. In architecture, negative space is as important as structure. The emptiness surrounding the pyramid magnifies it. Nothing distracts. Just sky, just sand, just stone. This simplicity sharpens focus. It allows the mind to rest on a single shape, a triangle against infinity. The effect can feel almost abstract, as if you are looking at a symbol rather than a building, a geometric idea made real. Perhaps that is why the pyramid persists in human imagination. It reduces complexity to clarity. 4 edges, 4 faces, 1 peak, from multiplicity to unity. And yet, beneath that simplicity lies intricate human coordination. No single person could lift those stones alone. It required synchronized effort, rope pulled in rhythm, voices guiding movement. The pyramid is silent now, But once it was full of sound, hammering, dragging, commands echoing across the plateau, dust in the air, heat pressing downward, water poured onto sand to ease friction, hands calloused, the rhythm of repetition. If you imagine that soundscape gently, you can almost hear the cadence. Not chaotic, measured, stone after stone, years passing, children born, seasons flooding, yet the work continued. That continuity is striking. In modern construction, machines compress effort into short timelines. Ancient builders relied on manpower, organization, and endurance. The pyramid rose gradually, almost imperceptibly, day by day. Only by stepping back across years could its growth be seen clearly. There is a lesson in that. Some structures, whether physical or internal, require time layered patiently. Quick assembly may lack foundation. The pyramids began with leveling bedrock before any upward motion. Foundation first, then ascent. That order matters. The mind can mirror that sequence. Ground first, then rise. As your breathing remains slow, imagine sitting in the shadow cast by one of the faces at late afternoon. Shade cool against warm sand, the stone above powering silently. Light sliding slowly across its slope as the sun descends. You are not required to solve its mysteries. You are not required to decode hidden chambers. You can simply exist beside it, and in that coexistence, something settles. Because the pyramid does not demand explanation, it allows contemplation. It stands not as a riddle to be conquered, but as a reminder that human effort, when aligned with intention and time, can become something that transcends its origin. As our journey across the desert plateau begins to slow, notice how the image of the pyramid now feels different than when we first arrived. It is no longer just a monument. It is no longer just an engineering puzzle. It has become a presence in your imagination. We walked through its origins in layered stone. We traced the patient rhythm of hands lifting block after block. We followed the lines of its geometry toward the sky and downward into bedrock. We stepped inside narrow corridors and stood beneath granite ceilings that have held their weight for thousands of years. We watched sunlight move across its faces and stars rise above its apex. Again and again, the same quiet theme returned. Endurance. The pyramid does not rush. It does not compete. It does not react to the centuries that pass around it. It simply remains. In a world that often feels fast and fragile, there is something deeply calming about that kind of stability. Stone resting upon stone. Gravity doing its quiet work, time stretching wide and patient. The builders who placed those blocks never imagined streaming cameras or satellites overhead. They worked with rope and rhythm, guided by belief and alignment with the sky. And yet their effort still shapes our thoughts today. That is the quiet miracle of continuity. Human hands, limited and temporary, can create forms that outlast generations. As you rest now, let the image simplify. A broad base, a steady rise, a single point reaching upward. Nothing ornate, nothing excessive, just clarity and shape. If your mind wanders, let it drift gently across sand and stone. If your breathing slows further, let it follow its own rhythm. The pyramids will still be there when you wake. They have waited through thousands of nights before this one. If you enjoyed wandering through this ancient landscape, you might explore the next video waiting quietly for you. And if you feel like it, you can like, subscribe, or leave a thoughtful comment so more curious minds can find their way here too. For now, allow your shoulders to soften. Allow the day to dissolve. Let the image of the pyramid fade slowly into darkness. Sleep well, and good night.